Alright guys, we got the Japanese GM, also known as a Isuzu here, with an exhaust system fault. Hooking up the J-Pro here. It looks like the only thing we have here is a generic fault. I had to kind of pause the screen here so I can explain that when you have generic faults, there's no way you're going to get any information from the fault code itself. But basically it's just telling me there's something wrong with the exhaust system, so I'm just going to have to run through a region and see what I find. At 1 minute, I started noticing that it's very loud, and then I clicked like that whistling noise, you know, that generic Isuzu whistling noise. A lot of you might already know what it is going to be. I suspected that it's going to be this flex pipe here, the one with the mesh. It's always leaks there and makes that whistling noise, but no, actually this time around it was a little further ahead at this engine brake. Check it out. So I know that this is going to be one of the major issues with this truck, so we're just going to focus on this exhaust leak here and retest that region and see what happens. I went back into J-Pro here, and what I'm doing is kind of looking to figure out if you can detect an exhaust leak by using just data pits, because that's very interesting to me, and it would be very helpful for me to understand if I could just diagnose using a computer. Because some exhaust leaks, yes, you can hear them like this Isuzu whistles, but some are a little harder to find. So I'm just going through this data real quick and kind of seeing what the data is looking like. And I do make a mistake here when I close this out and I go to my live data over here on J-Pro. I search for exhaust stuff, as you're going to see here. And I forgot that J-Pro specifically, you have to make sure that that little box that says refresh on the left is highlighted. If that little box is not highlighted, then the data pit won't actually read live data. It would just sit there as the key on ignition, what it read when the key on was on. So you can see here I found exhaust pressures and it says 0, and I'm just thinking like, okay, so maybe this data pit is just dead, you know, it doesn't record anything. So I couldn't really determine if you can find exhaust leaks during data pits, but if you guys know or have some tricks for that, put it down in the comments and let me know. And check this out, guys. His bolts are just gone. Look at that. That's just corrosion down here where we live. Now, I will say that every time I do find corrosion like this, it does take many, many years. This truck is kind of oldish, you know, getting up there. So it's normal, typical stuff we see around here. Here's a breakdown. You can see that there's 2 gaskets that I'm going to be replacing, and I'll show you exactly why I'm replacing them. Now, when you're doing this, you're supposed to take the whole pipe off from the other end as well. But with that corrosion, I don't want to break something else, so I'm just showing you here that you can get it over this engine brake lip. You just have to kind of compress this mesh section in with a pry bar, and that'll just clear that lip. You got to be very careful not to damage that lip, otherwise the exhaust won't seal anymore. That engine brake will stop working, so just be careful. I'm just doing this because of the corrosion around here. Here's what those seals look like, and the reason I'm replacing the seals, even though the bolts is what failed, is because in the middle of these seals is graphite. That graphite is completely cooked, so I would not be comfortable reusing these seals. We're going to cut all this stuff out, not even worry about reusing that. I'm just going to use regular bolts back in there. You'll get to see that, and put new seals and retest, and that's it. Now, J-Pro being generic and stuff like that, I didn't communicate with the actual exhaust module, and that's why I don't have full control over getting the actual codes that are being thrown out. I just have that generic one. You have to keep in mind that if it's an exhaust leak, then most likely the DPF is not getting up to the proper temperatures it needs, and then the exhaust module is actually recognizing that through NOx sensors, and it's able to pretty much tell you that through specific codes. I just don't have access to that. You know, we probably have a low temp or a DPF temperature inaccurate or something similar to that can help you determine if you have an exhaust leak. But in this case, we're just going to be our visual inspection, our audible inspection, and we're going to truck along and just hope that our final region passes, which it did. I'm just going to tell you right now. Go ahead, you can see that I started a new region. The timer at the bottom doesn't run sometimes on J-Pro, it's kind of iffy, but it is running and passing, and everything looks great. The truck was also test driven several times before it was given to the customer. No other issues, but this is just kind of the thing you got to do when you get generic codes like this. You got to run it through a region and just fix one thing at a time until everything is running smoothly, guys. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, let me know down below.